All right, we'll continue with a live coverage from Washington, D.C., where President Obama is delivering his last State of the Union address.
Middle-class families are not going to feel more secure because we allowed a tax on collective bargaining to go unanswered. Food stamp recipients did not cause the financial crisis. Recklessness on Wall Street did. Immigrants aren't the principal reason wages haven't gone up. Those decisions are made in the boardrooms that all too often put quarterly earnings over long-term returns. It's sure not the average family watching tonight that avoids paying taxes through offshore accounts. The point is, I believe that in this new economy, workers and startups and small businesses need more of a voice, not less. The rules should work for them. And I'm not alone in this. This year I plan to lift up the many businesses who figured out that doing right by their workers or their customers or their communities ends up being good for their shareholders. And I want to spread those best practices across America. That's part of a brighter future. In fact, it turns out many of our best corporate citizens are also our most creative. And this brings me to the second big question we as a country have to answer. How do we reignite that spirit of innovation to meet our biggest challenges? 60 years ago, when the Russians beat us into space, we didn't deny Sputnik was up there. We didn't argue about the science or shrink our research and development budget. We built a space program almost overnight, and 12 years later, we were walking on the moon. That spirit of discovery is in our DNA. America is Thomas Edison and the Wright brothers and George Washington Carver. America is Grace Hopper and Katherine Johnson and Sally Ride. America is every immigrant and entrepreneur from Boston to Austin to Silicon Valley racing to shape a better future. That's who we are. And over the past 7 years, we've nurtured that spirit. We've protected an open internet and taken bold new steps to get more students and low-income Americans online. We've launched next-generation manufacturing hubs and online tools that give an entrepreneur everything he or she needs to start a business in a single day. But we can do so much more. You know, last year, Vice President Biden said that with a new moonshot, America can cure cancer. Last month, he worked with this Congress to give scientists at the National Institutes of Health the strongest resources that they've had in over a decade. Well, So tonight I'm announcing a new national effort to get it done. And because he's gone to the mat for all of us on so many issues over the past 40 years, I'm putting Joe in charge of mission control. For the loved ones we've all lost, for the families that we can still save, let's make America the country that cures cancer once and for all. What do you say, Joe? Let's make it happen. Now, medical research is critical. We need the same level of commitment when it comes to developing clean energy sources. Look, if anybody still wants to dispute the science around climate change, have at it. You will be pretty lonely because you'll be debating our military, most of America's business leaders, the majority of the American people, almost the entire scientific community, and 200 nations around the world who agree it's a problem and intend to solve it. But even if the planet wasn't at stake, even if 2014 wasn't the warmest year on record, until 2015 turned out to be even hotter, why would we want to pass up the chance for American businesses to produce and sell the energy of the future? Listen, 7 years ago, we made the single biggest investment in clean energy in our history. Here are the results. In fields from Iowa to Texas, wind power is now cheaper than dirtier conventional power. On rooftops from Arizona to New York, solar is saving Americans tens of millions of dollars a year on their energy bills and employs more Americans than coal in jobs that pay better than average. We're taking steps to give homeowners the freedom to generate and store their own energy, something, by the way, that environmentalists and Tea Partiers have teamed up to support. And meanwhile, we've cut our imports of foreign oil by nearly 60% and cut carbon pollution more than any other country on earth. Gas under $2 a gallon ain't bad either. Now we've got to accelerate the transition away from old, dirtier energy sources. Rather than subsidize the past, we should invest in the future, especially in communities that rely on fossil fuels. We do them no favor when we don't show them where the trends are going. And that's why I'm going to push to change the way we manage our oil and coal resources so that they better reflect the cost they impose on taxpayers and our planet. And that way we put money back into those communities and put tens of thousands of Americans to work building a 21st century transportation system. Now, none of this is going to happen overnight. And yes, there are plenty of entrenched interests who want to protect the status quo. But the jobs we'll create, the money we'll save, the planet we'll preserve, that is the kind of future our kids and our grandkids deserve. And it's within our grasp. And climate change is just one of many issues where our security is linked to the rest of the world. And that's why the third big question that we have to answer together is how to keep America safe and strong without either isolating ourselves or trying to nation build everywhere there's a problem. I told you earlier, all the talk of America's economic decline is political hot air. Well, so is all the rhetoric you hear about our enemies getting stronger and America getting weaker. Let me tell you something. The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth. Period. Period. It's not even close. It's not even close. It's not even close. We spend more on our military than the next 8 nations combined. Our troops are the finest fighting force in the history of the world. No nation attacks us directly or our allies because they know that's the path to ruin. Surveys show our standing around the world is higher than when I was elected to this office, and when it comes to every important international issue, people of the world do not look to Beijing or Moscow to lead, they call us. So, I think it's useful to level set here. Because when we don't make good decisions. Now, as someone who begins every day with an intelligence briefing, I know this is a dangerous time. But that's not primarily because of some looming superpower out there, and it's certainly not because of diminished American strength. In today's world, we're threatened less by evil empires and more by failing states. The Middle East is going through a transformation that will play out for a generation, rooted in conflicts that date back millennia. Economic headwinds are blowing in from a Chinese economy that is in significant transition. Even as their economy severely contracts, Russia is pouring resources in to prop up Ukraine and Syria, client states that they saw slipping away from their orbit. And the international system we built after World War II is now struggling to keep pace with this new reality. It's up to us, the United States of America, to help remake that system. And to do that well, it means that we've got to set priorities. Priority number one is protecting the American people and going after terrorist networks. Both al-Qaeda and now ISIL pose a direct threat to our people because in today's world, even a handful of terrorists who place no value on human life, including their own, can do a lot of damage. They use the internet to poison the minds of individuals inside our country. Their actions undermine and destabilize our allies. We have to take them out. But as we focus on destroying ISIL, over-the-top claims that this is World War III just play into their hands. Masses of fighters on the back of pickup trucks, twisted souls plotting in apartments or garages, they pose an enormous danger to civilians. They have to be stopped. But they do not threaten our national existence. That is the story ISIL wants to tell. That's the kind of propaganda they use to recruit. We don't need to build them up to show that we're serious. And we sure don't need to push away vital allies in this fight by echoing the lie that ISIL is somehow representative of one of the world's largest religions.
All right, US President Barack Obama, they're making very important points on combating terror in the Middle East. We're slipping into a very short break, but after the break, we'll continue with the live coverage on the last State of the Union address by President Obama. Coverage continues where President Obama is delivering his last address of the State of the Union address, where he's talking about the progress that the US leadership has made in the world.
Broken society pursue a lasting peace. That's why we built a global coalition with sanctions and principled diplomacy to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran. And as we speak, Iran has rolled back its nuclear program, shipped out its uranium stockpile, and the world has avoided another war. That's how we stopped the spread of Ebola in West Africa. Our military, our doctors, our development workers, they were heroic. They set up the platform that then allowed other countries to join in behind us and stamp out that epidemic. Hundreds of thousands, maybe a couple million lives were saved. That's how we forged a Trans-Pacific Partnership to open markets and protect workers and the environment and advance American leadership in Asia. It cuts 18,000 taxes on products made in America, which will then support more good jobs here in America. With TPP, China does not set the rules in that region, we do. You want to show our strength in this new century? Approve this agreement. Give us the tools to enforce it. It's the right thing to do. Let me give you another example. 50 years of isolating Cuba had failed to promote democracy. It set us back in Latin America. That's why we restored diplomatic relations, opened the door to travel and commerce, positioned ourselves to improve the lives of the Cuban people. So if you want to consolidate our leadership and credibility in the hemisphere, recognize that the Cold War is over. Lift the embargo. The point is, American leadership in the 21st century is not a choice between ignoring the rest of the world, except when we kill terrorists, or occupying and rebuilding whatever society is unraveling. Leadership means a wise application of military power and rallying the world behind causes that are right. It means seeing our foreign assistance as a part of our national security, not something separate, not charity. When we lead nearly 200 nations to the most ambitious agreement in history to fight climate change, yes, that helps vulnerable countries, but it also protects our kids. When we help Ukraine defend its democracy, or Colombia resolve a decades-long war, that strengthens the international order we depend on. When we help African countries feed their people and care for the sick, it's the right thing to do, and it prevents the next pandemic from reaching our shores. You know, right now we're on track to end the scourge of HIV/AIDS. That's within our grasp. And we have the chance to accomplish the same thing with malaria, something I'll be pushing this Congress to fund this year. That's American strength. That's American leadership. And that kind of leadership depends on the power of our example. That's why I will keep working to shut down the prison at Guantanamo. It is expensive, it is unnecessary, and it only serves as a recruitment brochure for our enemies. There's a better way. And that's why we need to reject any politics that targets people because of race or religion. Let me just say this.
Short break here on Fast Up, but we will continue with the live coverage of President Obama's last State of the Union address. Do stay tuned. Working for a better political system is what President Obama is talking about right now in his last State of the Union address. We'll cross live straight to Washington, D.C. right now.
As long as I hold this office. But my fellow Americans, this cannot be my task or any president's alone. There are a whole lot of folks in this chamber, good people, who would like to see more cooperation, would like to see a more elevated debate in Washington, but feel trapped by the imperatives of getting elected. by the noise coming out of your base. I know, you've told me. It's the worst kept secret in Washington. And a lot of you aren't enjoying being trapped in that kind of rancor. But that means if we want a better politics, and I'm addressing the American people now, if we want a better politics, it's not enough just to change a congressman or change a senator or even change a president. We have to change the system to reflect our better selves. I think we've got to end the practice of drawing our congressional districts so that politicians can pick their voters and not the other way around. Let a bipartisan group do it. I believe we've got to reduce the influence of money in our politics so that a handful of families or hidden interests can't bankroll our elections. And if our existing approach to campaign finance reform can't pass muster in the courts, we need to work together to find a real solution, because it's a problem. And most of you don't like raising money. I know. I've done it. We've got to make it easier to vote, not harder. We need to modernize it for the way we live now. This is America. We want to make it easier for people to participate. And over the course of this year, I intend to travel the country to push for reforms that do just that. But I can't do these things on my own. Changes in our political process, in not just who gets elected, but how they get elected, that will only happen when the American people demand it. It depends on you. That's what's meant by a government of, by and for the people. What I'm suggesting is hard. It's a lot easier to be cynical, to accept that change is not possible. And politics is hopeless. And the problem is, all the folks who are elected don't care. And to believe that our voices and our actions don't matter. But if we give up now, then we forsake a better future. Those with money and power will gain greater control over the decisions that could send a young soldier to war, or allow another economic disaster, or roll back the equal rights and voting rights that generations of Americans have fought, even died to secure. And then, as frustration grows, there will be voices urging us to fall back into our respective tribes, to scapegoat fellow citizens who don't look like us, or pray like us, or vote like we do, or share the same background. We can't afford to go down that path. It won't deliver the economy we want. It will not produce the security we want. But most of all, it contradicts everything that makes us the envy of the world. So, my fellow Americans, whatever you may believe, whether you prefer one party or no party, whether you supported my agenda or fought as hard as you could against it, our collective futures depends on your willingness to uphold your duties as a citizen, to vote, to speak out, to stand up for others, especially the weak, especially the vulnerable, knowing that each of us is only here because somebody, somewhere, stood up for us.
All right, that is President Obama delivering his last State of the Union address in the U.S. Capitol. And for more detailed reports on this last State of the Union address by President Obama, I'm now joined by Catherine Gibson, who reports for the News Center for the Voice of America. Thank you very much, Catherine, for speaking to India today. This is President Obama's last and the final State of the Union address. How would you analyze the President's State of the Union address today, that what he's delivering right now in the U.S.?
Well, certainly, because this is his last State of the Union address, he wants to look at the big picture. The President is looking towards his legacy after he leaves office. And that means asking some big picture questions in this State of the Union address. It means looking at what America can do with technology, with its economy, and what it means for foreign policy on the world stage, what it means for our political process, our political dialogue in this country, which has been very combative, especially in a presidential election. He wants to look at the big picture and the big questions and see where America heads in the next 5 to 10 years.
Also, Catherine, President Obama just spoke about the immigrants who are facing problems in their country and are traveling to other countries for refuge. I mean, if I would just like to quote what he just said, that he said that as frustration grows, there will be voices urging us to fall back into tribes, to scapegoat our fellow citizens who do not look like us, or pray like us, or vote like us, or do share the same background. How would you see this statement by President Obama?
Well, it goes with what he's been saying in the past few months, particularly about the Syrian refugees, is that we need to welcome these people who are suffering because of war into this country, that that's part of the American set of values, is that we've always welcomed people into this country when they've been fleeing persecution and war. But, you know, there are many voices in this country who also have expressed concerns about those refugees and said that they could possibly harbor ISIS terrorists or terrorists of some other kind who could possibly harm us. So that's a big question in this country about how we welcome these people at a time of great uncertainty when we see all of these terrorist attacks around the world.
Talking about terror attacks, he did talk about combating terror, especially in the Middle East, and talking about Iran as well. I mean, how would you see it's the last year of President Obama in office? How do you see President Obama and the United States, their hand and their viewpoint in combating terrorism across the world, and especially in the Middle East, fighting the IS?
Well, you know, the president in his speech said that we are combating ISIS. We have a strong strategy to defeat them. He noted some of those successes and said, you know, if you come after us, we will go after you. So I think how the president would characterize his speech is that he has a strong strategy for combating the terrorists in the Middle East.
And also, talking about health mission, President Obama just announced tonight there in the United States about curing cancer. Let America be the only the country in the world which has a cure for cancer. And he got Vice President Biden to take up this responsibility. How effective do you think this mission control would be to target cancer?
Right, and that's, you know, a very emotional issue for Vice President Biden since he lost his son earlier this past year, to brain cancer. And he called upon Americans, you know, we've had these enormous initiatives in the past, the trip to go to the moon. He called on that history and said, this is what we can do. We can summon this energy to fight cancer now, and this is how we're going to do it.
Also, climate change. We just saw the talks that concluded on climate change talks that concluded in Paris last year. We saw a memorandum that came out of the talks, but do you think that now the priority for President Obama is also to include climate change? He just said that what happened in 2014, the climate just went from bad to worse in the year 2015. So do you think that climate change has now become one of his top priorities of his administration in last year of office this year?
Oh, I think so, certainly. That's certainly, I think, one of the things as he looks towards his legacy after leaving office that he would like to have listed on his agenda is that he's really pushed the issue of climate change. And of course, we'll have to see whether there's a Democrat or a Republican in the office of president next year, what they'll do to advance that agenda. And that will go a long ways towards seeing whether he was successful or not.
All right, Catherine, President Obama has just ended his last State of the Union address at the U.S. Capitol there. I thank you very much for speaking here with us to India today, and we'll keep coming back to you for more updates on this story where President Obama in his last State of the Union address has just spoken about various issues which will be his top priorities in the last year of his office this year. Many thanks for joining us. For now, we're slipping into a very short break, but news and updates will continue right here on India Today.
Ansari, who was there with many other friends trying to take a selfie. The latest that we are hearing is that Ramesh Walunja's body has been found at Mahim near Dharavi.